On June 10, 2018, 48-year-old Lara Prychodko, a prominent New York City socialite, fell 27 floors and died immediately upon impact. Born on June 23, 1970, the victim grew up in Toronto, Canada, completing her higher education at Prychodko School of the Arts before attending the University of Toronto for further studies. She was known to be extremely outgoing and affectionate, and as the oldest of 3 sisters, she was very protective of her younger siblings. The circumstances of her death have remained a mystery for years. Police officials did not find any indication of someone else's involvement, but her family was convinced that foul play was involved. We will be exploring the elusive truth behind her death and the many signs that point to her estranged husband's involvement. The victim lived in a lap of luxury by all accounts, with her apartment in the Zeckendorf Towers reportedly costing upwards of $6,500 a month in rent. She had also enjoyed a glamorous birthday party just a few weeks prior to the incident, which took her from Paris to Ibiza in a globe-trotting celebration. However, later reports indicated that all was not well under the surface. While Lara might have looked like she was living a comfortable life, she was struggling with numerous personal and financial issues. For starters, she was entangled in a divorce dispute with her husband, David Schlachet, who wanted full custody of their son, Talon. The legal proceedings had stretched on for years, and the cost of the battle had taken a serious toll on the victim's mental health. Furthermore, Lara had been out of a job for 5 years, and she had reportedly accumulated a mountain of debt. We will soon explain how she came to be in such a dire situation, but first we need to take a look at how events played out on the day of her death. At 4:10 p.m. on July 10th, security footage showed her entering her residential apartment building in Union Square and getting on the elevator. Her shuffling walk suggested she was under the influence of alcohol, though it bears mentioning that the footage was never released to the public. 10 minutes later, her neighbor reportedly saw her entering her apartment, but she claimed to have heard a loud noise in the hallway shortly after. When she went out to see what was happening, all she found was Lara's purse at the garbage chute. At 4:40 p.m., the building superintendent found her unrecognizable corpse in the trash compactor and called the police. The victim likely broke several bones during the fall, but to make things worse, the trash compactor had crushed her body until she hardly seemed human at all. Instead of jumping out of the window as you might have expected, Lara had allegedly fallen down the garbage chute. This odd choice of a final resting place suggests 2 possibilities. Either the victim truly thought so little of herself that she felt she belonged with the trash, or someone with a vendetta against her wanted to humiliate her in death. When authorities arrived on the scene, they brought her body in to conduct an autopsy and found high levels of alcohol in her bloodstream, leading them to conclude that she had accidentally fallen into the chute in a drunken stupor. It's possible that the victim was being reckless due to the many personal obstacles she was facing, but there's also a chance that the victim simply chose to end it all. Lara had always had problems with alcohol, and 6 years before she died, she was arrested for driving under the influence in Southampton. This led to her husband suing her for full custody of their son, but Lara was not going to let one mistake deprive her of watching her child grow up. Over the few years, she fought tooth and nail to gain the right to see her son, and so it happened, she had finally gotten visitation rights shortly before she died. What's more, she was scheduled to meet a counselor to iron out the details on July 11th, after which she would have met her son. The legal victory allowed her overnight visitation rights, and the prospect of getting her son back should have made her more careful. This is why the victim's father, 73-year-old Nicholas Prychodko, had maintained to this very day that Lara was killed in cold blood. A resident of Toronto, Nicholas had rushed to New York as soon as he heard about his oldest daughter's death. He had his doubts about it being an accident from the moment he was informed, but these doubts turned into full-on paranoia when he saw the trash chute she allegedly fell down. Standing at 5 feet and 10 inches and weighing around 130 pounds at the time of her death, It seemed unlikely that Lara could have accidentally tumbled into the chute that was hardly 15 by 18 inches in size. Also, her father was aware of the long, bitter feud she had been embroiled in with her husband. This led him to what he thought was the only possible conclusion: her estranged husband was somehow involved in her death. His repeated claims fell on deaf ears, and in 2019, Nicholas decided to take matters into his own hands by approaching Michael Baden, the former chief medical examiner for New York City. Baden had achieved global notoriety after revealing that Jeffrey Epstein's injuries suggested homicide rather than taking his own life, so Nicholas knew he was the right man for the job. On July 15, 2019, a year after Lara's mangled body was discovered in the trash compactor, Baden made a startling revelation. After poring over every report and photo he could get his hands on, the medical examiner gave two pieces of evidence that suggested foul play. Firstly, there was the presence of a faint blue line that went around her neck, which usually indicates strangulation with a cord. Secondly, a crime scene photo showed that Lara's blouse was torn from the front. There's a chance that this could have happened during the fall, but it makes it all the more likely that someone attacked her. The strangulation theory also explains a puzzling component to the crime scene: the lack of blood. Even though Lara had suffered numerous lacerations on her way down, there was not nearly as much blood as expected. The victim's father knew that her husband could not have acted alone, since the vicious nature of the crime would have been too much for him to handle. Instead, he speculated that David hired a hitman for the job, and the cord marks certainly support this theory. Do you think Michael Baden's shocking reports were a game-changer in the case? Let us know in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. In order to understand the sordid series of events that led to Lara's demise, we must wind the clock back to 1990, when she moved to New York City. Her dazzling green eyes likely had stars in them when she entered the Big Apple, and coupled with her strawberry blonde hair, they made her a shoo-in for small-time modeling gigs. Her best friend was already a model at the time, and pretty soon, Lara's face could be seen on many romance novels, where she acted as a stand-in for the female protagonist. Even though she had later become quite well off, Lara was not born into money, so she had to work hard to make ends meet throughout her 20s. She got sporadic modeling work, but it was not quite enough to support her life in New York, so she also worked as a waitress to pay the bills. The diner she worked at, the coffee shop, had just opened that year, but it would soon become an iconic aspect of Union Square for decades. Lara spotted many notable faces during her stint at the diner, including the likes of Madonna. But one fateful day, she ran into someone that would change her life forever: David Schlachet. Her future husband was getting started as a real estate developer at the time, and he was at the coffee shop for lunch with his uncle when Lara came to take their order. David's uncle urged him to find himself a girl like her, which prompted David to ask Lara out. In August 2003, Lara and David got married in Toronto, with their wedding taking place at the Art Gallery of Ontario. The couple enjoyed their life together over the next few years, regularly going to their luxurious estate in the Hamptons during the summer, and their faces showing up in countless pictures in the New York Social Diary. Lara moved up in the world and quit waitressing prior to her wedding, eventually getting a cushy job as an event planner at WebMD. She was making plenty of money, as was her husband, and for a time it seemed like their life together could not get any better. However, everything started going downhill with the birth of their son in 2006. According to Nicholas, the stress of taking care of a child put strain on Lara and David's relationship, and things were only going to get worse from there. Fast forward to 2012, and Lara experienced perhaps the worst year of her life. She had been recently diagnosed with a brain tumor, and she was later arrested for a DUI. The diagnosis might have led to her mental state spiraling out of control, potentially causing her reckless behavior. As if that was not enough, she also got laid off from her job in 2012. WebMD was facing financial problems in the aftermath of the 2008 recession, and they decided to start downsizing 4 years later. Needless to say, the combination of all this bad luck placed enormous pressure on Lara's already troubled marriage. In February 2014, Lara decided she could not keep going like this and filed for divorce, hiring the notable New York firm Cohen Goldstein to represent her. On August 20th, 2014, she emailed her attorney, telling him that he had to do whatever it takes to get the divorce done. Of course, ending a decade-long marriage is no small matter, and Lara kept going back and forth the following 6 months. The legal costs were piling up, and around the time she sent the email, her law firm was reportedly suing her for $73,000 in unpaid bills. Her father also told the media that she had lost the ability to move half of her face muscles after a surgery, and the victim likely wanted her troubles to end in any way possible. As Lara toyed with the idea of abandoning the divorce petition, David's own life was about to be struck by disaster. His construction firm, Taucon Incorporated, appeared successful on the surface, but it turned out to be extremely mismanaged. David's firm had failed to fulfill its contractual obligations in 2 separate projects on the Upper East Side, both of which resulted in multi-million-dollar lawsuits. This led to David's company filing for bankruptcy in November 2016. During this time, some acquaintances alleged that Lara had found herself a new partner, Wayne Gattinella, the CEO of her former employer WebMD. If the rumors are true, Lara and Wayne were engaged in an illicit affair, since the CEO was married at the time. His marriage ended shortly after Lara's death, adding more fuel to the fiery rumors surrounding her personal life. Whatever the case may be, it's possible that the alleged culprit was incensed by his estranged wife moving on, while his life crashed and burned around him. When you factor in her legal victory in 2018, which would have brought her closer to her son, it's reasonable to assume that David was pushed past the breaking point. In February 2021, the victim's father filed the first of 2 wrongful death lawsuits against the supposed perpetrator. This is when the hitman allegations came to light, and Nicholas claimed that David was behind it all. He also stated that Lara's laptop had tracking software on it, which would have given the killer all the information he needed to strike at the right time. With his company in tatters, David stood to lose a lot if the divorce case ended in Lara's favor, including around $3 million in assets and custody of his son. According to Nicholas's attorneys, they were seeking precisely $321,629 with interest. The reason? David allegedly took this exact sum from Lara's IRA account, which was the only money she had at the time. He was also quite cunning about it, depositing the money in his son's account rather than his own. This suspicious transfer apparently took place in July 2018, the month Lara died, and there is plenty to suggest that David was trying to dig himself out of a financial hole by killing the mother of his child. Even though he emptied her savings account, David had been hit with defeat after defeat. He had been paying her $4,375 a month as part of the divorce settlement, and the judge also ordered him to pay her $30,000 towards her legal fees. With the walls closing in around him, a desperate David might have concluded that killing Lara was his only way out. The fact that he took all her money and tried to cover up his tracks is damning to say the least, and the slim chances that a person of Lara's size could fall feet first down a tiny garbage chute certainly points to foul play. Testimony from her neighbor also makes the theory that she fell seem highly unlikely. When you add the cord marks and the torn blouse to the equation, it's no surprise that Nicholas has not given up the battle to this day. David's attorneys have given him plenty of cover in court, but that has not stopped the victim's father from his fight to reveal the truth. In June 2023, Nicholas filed yet another lawsuit against the man he believes is responsible for his daughter's death. The results of the 2021 lawsuit have not been made public, and most of this new legal battle will likely happen behind closed doors. Amidst all the theories and rumors, there's one hard fact we should acknowledge. An innocent woman lost her life under peculiar circumstances, and the police never looked into the evidence her father provided. Lara's body now lies in a Ukrainian cemetery outside of Toronto. Nicholas made sure his daughter's grave was right next to her grandmother's, who she was very close to as a child. As for her own child, he will have to grow up without a mother and will likely carry the trauma of her unexplained death for the rest of his life. What are your thoughts on this bizarre death of a New York socialite? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Bad Badger.